representing the 7th Congressional District. On Friday, the House passed the Build Back Better Act.
Right.
And the bill is a transformative and historic investment for families across the country. But let me just say, I am so proud of the New York congressional delegation. We stood together, we stood firm, and we sent a strong message right from the beginning that this was an investment that needed to happen in terms of the COVID crisis that we were facing and the historic investment that needed to be made. For those who claim that we are facing inflation, let me say Moody Analytics and Senator Portman, when he spoke from the White House, he clearly stated that this bill is an anti-inflationary bill. So I want to thank Congressman Jeffries, chairman of the Democratic Caucus, for coordinating this press conference with me. And I think that we learned a big lesson when we passed the Affordable Care Act. It was a great legislation. We all know about it. Americans know that is an investment that really provides access to affordable care to working people in this country. The problem that we faced at the time is that we didn't talk about it. So here we are today to explain to the American people why this legislation, transformative and historic in terms of the investment that we are making for working families, is important, and why people need to know what is in it for them. So with expanded child tax credit, child care, and universal pre-K, expanded health care, lower prescription drug costs, and a massive investment to tackle the climate crisis, we are here to talk about those issues and the great historic investment that we are making as a nation. What does this bill mean for the American people? If you are a parent wondering how you are possibly going to pay for child care when you get called into work each morning, this bill is for you. If you are one of the 400,000 public housing residents who live in 285 public housing developments in New York City, facing mold, leaks, and other unacceptable conditions, this bill is for you. If you are 1 in 4 Americans who struggles to afford the prescription drugs that you rely on to stay healthy, this bill is for you. And finally, for all of us who are living on this planet and care about the safety and well-being of today and future generations and fighting the climate crisis, this bill is for you. And I would like to talk a bit more about one part of the bill that I've been fighting hard for many years. It was last year in October 2019 that I stood at Meets houses with public housing residents announcing the introduction of my bill calling for an investment, a federal investment of $70 billion. At the time, many people were cynical. Many people thought that that goal would not be achieved. Well, here we are today. Overall, the package includes more than $150 billion in a huge step forward in addressing homelessness and housing insecurity in New York City and across the country. We are investing $65 billion in HUD's Public Housing Capital Fund, which is the largest one-time investment ever made in our nation's public housing system. $53 billion will be specifically targeted to high-needs PHAs like NYCHA. And this is justice. Again, for the 400,000 people who live in public housing. We all know that federal disinvestment in public housing has forced many residents to live in accelerating substandard living conditions. Residents suffer from a consistent lack of hot water, insufficient heat during the winter months. And the bill also provides $24 billion for Section 8 tenant-based vouchers, making a major investment in housing affordability for the working poor. And also the bill includes $200 million for Section 202 program, ensuring that our seniors have a place to live in dignity. So we are here to urge swift passage of this bill in the Senate. It is imperative that without delay, the Senate takes this bill up and bring it home. And with that, let me call Chairman Jeffries, the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Velasquez, for your leadership and for working together to convene us all. The New York congressional delegation has worked incredibly hard to deliver for the people. President Biden promised that under his leadership, America will build back better. Democrats in the House are delivering for the American people. The New York congressional delegation is delivering big for the city of New York. The Build Back Better Act is going to cut taxes for working families and middle-class families here in New York City. The Build Back Better Act is going to create hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs, if not more, here in the city of New York. The Build Back Better Act is going to lower health care costs, lower child care costs, lower housing costs, lower education costs, and lower the high price of life-saving prescription drugs. The Build Back Better Act is going to dramatically improve the lives of everyday New Yorkers. That is why it's so imperative for the Senate to act, and to act quickly. There are so many different aspects of the Build Back Better Act that are going to be transformative for the people that the New York congressional delegation collectively represents. Let me just speak about one that I've worked on with the delegation as well as members of the Congressional Black Caucus. The Build Back Better Act includes $5 billion in break the cycle funding to invest in community-based anti-violence initiatives, violence interrupters, and also to make sure that we are providing our young people with extracurricular opportunities, academic enrichment opportunities, as well as pathways to a productive life by supporting things like summer youth employment. The Build Back Better Act and its $5 billion in break the cycle funding will be the most money ever invested in community-based anti-violence initiatives in America's history. And a significant amount of that funding will go to organizations that are doing the work on the ground here in the city of New York. Thanks to the New York congressional delegation, as well as the Congressional Black Caucus and Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus, we've worked collectively to deliver meaningfully for the people. It's now my great honor to yield to the distinguished chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Nadler.
Well, thank you very much. For too long, we have failed to invest properly in our people. Instead, we have allowed big corporations and the wealthy to access all the resources that this nation has to offer without paying their fair share. That stops now.
Yeah.
The Build Back Better Act delivers a once-in-a-generation investment to lower the everyday costs that burden working families: health care, housing, child care, education, and more. It is transformational. President Biden was elected. Some people in the press say he wasn't elected to be a transformational president. But everything in this bill that is transformational, he campaigned on. This is a campaign fulfillment, campaign promise fulfillment. The improvements are true for Americans around the country and for New Yorkers. The bill will dramatically cut healthcare costs for New Yorkers by finally allowing Medicare to directly negotiate drug prices, by capping out-of-pocket prescription costs for seniors, and perhaps most importantly, by setting a $35 a month cap on life-saving insulin. No longer will New Yorkers have to choose between buying their medication or paying their rent. No longer will they have to ration insulin. Sufferers of type 1 diabetes ration insulin. They put their lives at risk because the cost of insulin has gone from $30 a vial to $300 a vial. And this will cap it at $35. The bill also represents the largest expansion of the Affordable Care Act in a decade, making sure more people can access quality, affordable health insurance when and where they need it. While we have more work to do on affordable housing, the Build Back Better Act finally provides excuse me. The Build Back Better Act finally provides desperately needed funding for NYCHA and expands rental assistance to help New Yorkers find and keep safe, affordable, and healthy housing. Thousands of housing units in New York will be constructed or rehabilitated. The bill also puts money back in the pockets of working families by addressing the unfair SALT deduction caps, which have increased taxes for New York and threaten the state's ability to provide high-quality benefits to those who need them most, and lowers taxes for nearly 1 million New Yorkers. And let me say one other thing about the SALT tax. The purpose of the Trump administration and the conservatives in capping SALT at $10,000 was precisely to make it more expensive for states to provide social services for their people. It's precisely to stop liberal progressive measures. And by doing what we're doing on SALT, this will not help the rich people in particular. This will help middle-class people, and this will help states be able to afford to provide social services for their people. For the millions of working families in New York, this bill provides real relief by expanding universal pre-K, by dramatically expanding child care subsidies, and increasing the supply of safe, quality, affordable child care centers around New York. The average New York family with 2 young children currently spends nearly a quarter of its yearly income on child care. This bill ensures these families will pay no more than 7% of their income on high-quality child care. The bill addresses climate change head-on. Through the Build Back Better Act, greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced by more than 50%. We will invest in infrastructure resiliency, and we will develop a civilian climate corps modeled on FDR's Civilian Conservation Corps, creating 21st century good-paying jobs for New Yorkers. Simply stated, the Build Back Better Act unlocks the full potential of New York families. Thanks to Chairman Jeffries and Chairwoman Velasquez and nearly every single House Democrat, we are one step closer to making this transformational change a reality. I urge the Senate to pass this bill as soon as possible so we can start making these historic investments in the city, in its future, and in the people of the United States. Thank you very much. And I now have the honor of introducing the chairman of the Investigation and Oversight Committee, the chairwoman, Carolyn Maloney.
Thank you. Thank you. Today I'm absolutely thrilled to be celebrating the passage of the Build Back Better Act, the most visionary, wide-ranging well-funded investment and progressive legislation that I've ever had the opportunity to vote for. It's transformational, it is changing, it is the best thing to come to New York in a long time. And it wouldn't have happened without the leadership of Chairwoman Velasquez and Chairman Hakeem Jeffries, who organized this hearing today. I want to thank them for that, and all of the members of the New York delegation that are here today that were part of the effort to pass this extremely important piece of legislation. I absolutely love this bill. It's going to do so much to help people, not only in New York, but across this country, but specifically for New York. It has over $30 billion for NYCHA, for public housing here in our great city, which has been underfunded and backlogged with needed repairs. This will allow us to repair NYCHA, and it will help all across the country. A package that is very important to New Yorkers is a $2.86 billion for the World Trade Center Health Program that will provide the funding and health care for the heroes and heroines of 9/11 and the victims of 9/11. That's so important. Combined with the infrastructure, we'll be able to build the 2nd Avenue subway up to 125th Street and plan to go all the way down to the tip of Manhattan and into Brooklyn. It has so many good things for so many people in it. And it has the most important and expansive investment in climate change ever. Over $555 billion invested in greening America. Included in this effort will be the electrification of the post office, buses and trucks, and also the electrification of the federal fleet. This will get us off of fossil fuel, which is 80% of the problem that is creating climate change. And it will also help in delivering for families, giving 4 weeks of family and medical leave, the child care tax credit that can lift children out of poverty. And I must say, as a former teacher, strong investments in education, including monies for 3K, for children to start education 3 years old and 4 years old. It's there for every child in America. And it also attacks the high cost of prescription drugs and the high cost of health care. We'll now be able to negotiate lower drug prices for seniors. We'll be able to cap insulin at $35 a month. They'll cap out-of-pocket expenses for seniors at $2,000 a year. So there's so many wonderful things here. I could talk over and over and more, but so many other people want to speak and have a strong message to give. So first of all, I want to thank all my colleagues for their leadership, the Democratic leadership, and President Biden for delivering for the American people. On to the Senate, we must pass it there. Thank you. And the next person to speak is my good friend, the outstanding representative from Queens, Grace Ming, and vice chair of the Democratic Party. What's the title? She's important. I don't know all her titles, but she's important. Believe me. Grace Ming.
My term is over. We got back to White House. Good morning, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, all the way from Queens, New York. I want to say a special thank you to our caucus chairman, Hakeem Jeffries, and to our small business chairwoman, Nydia Velasquez, and their teams for putting together this important event. We are here, of course, to celebrate the passage of a monumental and historical piece of legislation in the Build Back Better Act, and to implore the Senate to take up this piece of life-saving piece of legislation as soon as possible. This will make tremendous investments and transformational changes in the lives of our fellow New Yorkers and Americans all across the country. It will help so many of our working families and our kids and our senior citizens. As a mom of 2 young kids, helping our families and kids, this is one of the most important investments that we can make for our country. For programs like paid leave, which will help everyone from the newborn to being able to take care of our elderly, to our UPK programs that will help early education of our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds, which will be transformational in their lives. For child tax credits expansion, like Carolyn Maloney said, which will help lift so many of our kids and families out of poverty. In my district alone, in the month of October, there were about 70,000 payments that were made in the amount of about $29 million, and that's just in one congressional district alone. I have heard from so many families about how this has literally helped them in so many ways. One of the programs that I worked on within this Build Back Better Act was the Affordable Internet Access for All. This is something that many in this country have been working on for a long time, but not till COVID were we able to fully see the detrimental effects of not having affordable internet access that it would have on our children. So many of whom were not able, millions of kids across this country who were not able to properly learn because they didn't have affordable access to the internet. And I'm glad that this program and this bill includes it. We talked about climate change. This is something, of course, that is one of the most existential threats that our country and our future generations are facing. But this has been, in the past few months, something that is very personal to me and my district, especially after Hurricane Ida, where we saw 6 of our constituents die because of the floodings and the drownings. Because of severe weather and because of insufficient infrastructure, we have seen how real climate change has impacted so many of our Queens and New York City families. Passing the Build Back Better Act means that no one will be left behind. Our most essential workers, our moms, our grandmas and our grandpas, they need more than just a holiday once a year. They need more than just applause every day at 7 p.m. and that includes our home healthcare workers as well. They need real investment. They need investment. They need money to be able to go back to work, to stay in work, and to have a better quality of life. That's what building back better means. It means not leaving any one person behind. So let's get this through the Senate and let's get help to the American people as soon as possible. Next, I'm honored to call up a fighter on so many issues, including our immigrant communities, Congressman Adriano Espana.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This is a great bill. It's the biggest investment in families across America in the history of our country. This is a big effing deal. And so we have, as Congresswoman Velasquez, who's a champion for public housing, a major investment in public housing to see new boilers, new elevators, pointing work done, roof work done. It is so important for folks that are living in inhumane conditions to get an upgrade in the quality of life in NYCHA housing. So it's a major investment in NYCHA housing. But those that don't live in NYCHA housing and are finding it hard to live in New York City because of affordability will be able to access Section 8 housing vouchers. Important, significant numbers of Section 8 housing vouchers. So in housing, public housing and affordable housing and senior housing, this bill is a good thing. But you also have in transportation something that is very dear and near to me and Congresswoman Maloney, which is the second phase of the 2nd Avenue subway. Now, I'll be going there after this press conference to go down in the tunnels. The tunnels are there already, 75% of them built, all the way to 120th Street. And so the extra money that we needed to connect that transportation desert, East Harlem, to, in fact, other counties in New York State, like Westchester County, Rockland County, and Putnam County, the money is there. That's a good thing. But in addition to that, right, immigrants who for 35 long years have been waiting for some level of relief will now be able to have a work authorization for 5 years and an additional 5 years, 10 years, where they're going to be able to leave their house without the fear that they're going to get stopped, arrested, and deported and separated from their families. That's a good thing. In addition to that, we're going to recapture over 400,000 immigrant visas for those folks that want to reunite with their family members. They're petitioning for their family members as well. Great investment in the environment. I just came from Glasgow. Yeah, somebody like me can travel to Glasgow. I think so. And so, great investment in the environment. And you see, we need that. We need that so much to get to that 1.5 Celsius threshold goal that we set as a planet. And here's my favorite, because this is my mom's favorite. Right here, $150 billion for the home health care workers. I'm going to go back home and tell her about that, and maybe I get a good lunch. That's a good thing. And so these are all important, very important measures. Again, esta es la inversión más grande. La inversión más grande para las familias de los Estados Unidos. The Senate has to come through for us. They must come through for us, and we know that they will. And America, of course, is waiting for these resources. At every lunch table, at every dinner table, at every family is waiting for these important investments to make sure that it is, again, affordable to live in New York City and in the United States of America. So thank you all. Thank you to all my colleagues. They've been wonderful. Each and every one of them have fought very hard. Nydia tells me what to do, and I don't argue back. And so with that, I'm going to leave you with a great Congress member from the borough of the Bronx, that young, shiny star. He doesn't even have a scratch in his face. Richie Torres.
I'm speaking last because of my lack of seniority, but it's an honor to be part of the New York delegation, and the Build Back Better Act represents a transformational investment, not only in the physical but the social and human infrastructure of the United States. It's transformational in more ways than one. It's going to lay the groundwork for a clean energy economy, to combat catastrophic climate change. It's going to lay the groundwork for a care economy that will bring support, economic security to families with children, to essential workers, to the elderly and the disabled. And at the heart of the new care economy is going to be a safety net of home care. And that would not have been possible without 1199 and SEIU. There are more than 800,000 people on the waiting list for Medicaid-funded home care. And by 2034, there are going to be more senior citizens than children in the United States. And we are finally going to have an expanded safety net of home care to ensure that the elderly can age with dignity and decency. And so my message to 1199 is you care for the people we love, and we want to care for you. We're also, the Build Back Better Act will expand public education for the first time in more than a century, right? Pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-olds. We're going to expand access to affordable health care, and we're going to create, preserve, and retrofit about 1.4 million units of affordable housing. Now, contrary to the lies of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party does lie often, the Build Back Better Act will not add to the deficit. Not only does it pay for itself, but it's going to reduce the deficit by more than $100 billion. Nor will the Build Back Better Act add to the cost or tax burden of middle class or working class Americans. It's going to lower taxes for families with children. It's going to lower taxes for essential workers. It's going to lower taxes for property owners. It's going to cut home care costs and child care costs. It's going to cut the cost of higher education and housing and health care. It's going to cut the cost of energy with a transition to clean energy. It's going to cap the cost of insulin At $35, there are 100 million Americans who are either diabetic or pre-diabetic, for whom insulin is either a necessity in the present or is going to be a necessity in the future. Now, there's no issue that strikes closer to home for me than public housing, and it's been an honor to partner with Councilmember Velasquez and the whole delegation. I'm sorry, Congressman. We were both former council members, so that's why. There's anyway, maybe I'm having a senior moment. But the Build Back Better Act includes more than $60 billion for public housing. Tens of billions of dollars for NYCHA would have been unimaginable only a year ago. If I had said to you that the New York delegation was going to deliver more than $60 billion for public housing, you would, to believe that would, you have to believe that, you have the bridge to sell you, the Brooklyn Bridge or something. But we're confident that the Build Back Better Act is going to include enough funding to ensure that every roof and every brick, every boiler and every elevator that requires repair and replacement is finally going to be repaired. That we're finally going to end the humanitarian crisis that has persisted for far too long and has brought too much suffering to the people of public housing, including my family, my mother. And then finally, one of my greatest passions is the child tax credit. Before the Biden administration, before the latest Congress, the lowest income Americans were actually excluded from the full benefit of the child tax credit. The Build Back Better Act would make the child tax credit permanently refundable, permanently inclusive of the lowest income Americans. And unlike most tax credits, which tend to be given annually, families are going to receive up to $300 per child every month. The child tax credit is essentially Social Security for families with children. And like Social Security, it's going to become a permanent part of the American social safety net. So we're on the verge of building back better here in New York City. And as New York City goes, so goes the rest of America. And so I have a simple message for the United States Senate. We in the Democratic Caucus, in the House Democratic Caucus, we have done our part. The ball is in your court. Thank you. And now, the chair of the Cybersecurity Committee, Yvette Clarke. Congressman and former council member Yvette Clarke.
Former council member. It's my old stomping ground. Thank you so much, Richie. It's so great to be here this morning with the New York delegation to really celebrate and drive home the point that we have done our job to build back better. I'm Congresswoman Yvette D. Clarke, and I proudly represent New York's 9th Congressional District, which is in Central and South Brooklyn. Like a long-awaited breeze, change is in the air. And this Thanksgiving, I am giving special thanks to the Biden-Harris administration for the national leadership, acting on behalf of all Americans and ushering in a new era of transformational investment. It is in large part due to this administration's commitment to our cause that we join here today to mark this historic House passage of the Build Back Better Act. These are indeed historic times. We are finally turning the page on a bygone century that is no longer of use to modern day America. And it is an honor and a privilege to stand beside my colleagues for this very important press conference on the giant step forward that we took last week. We passed the Build Back Better Act to deliver unprecedented investments that will help all Americans find solid ground again, especially in Brooklyn, where working class communities of color and immigrant families have borne the brunt of the health care crisis, economic instability, and massive displacement, all of which has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 outbreak. These are communities that have long been subjected to marginalization and neglect. These are communities that have been on the front lines of back-to-back hits from extreme weather events and devastating pandemic. We are on the precipice of progress, and that will require that the American people truly understand what is at stake and why it is imperative that they fully are aware of what is in this new law and what it would do for them and for our communities. Thankfully, the winds of change are finally blowing in their direction. We are living in a perfect storm at this moment. Our destiny is in our hands. Our focus throughout this pandemic has been to provide for the well-being of our communities, our city, and we came through as a delegation. We continue to deliver resources for the most vulnerable of our community, from the child tax credit, enabling families to access financial resources for the children of their households, to low and no interest loans for our small businesses and mom and pop entrepreneurs. We are delivering on the support needed to rebuild lives and communities after the devastating impact of COVID, rampant inequalities, and our deteriorating infrastructure and a housing crisis that has only worsened. We held strong to our conviction that any package passed must bring immediate and tangible change in the lives of working people. And I'm proud to say, following the months of hard work and living in the sausage-making factory, the debate and the compromise, the Build Back Better Act is that package. To my fellow Brooklynites and all New Yorkers, we're finally getting the support we need and deserve to make a difference in the overall healthcare, education, transportation, and to meet the needs of challenging times, climate change, broadband deserts, and the installation of new and emerging clean energy modalities, energy efficiency, and creating new green spaces in areas long deprived of it. This transformational legislation will push all of us ahead like few bills before in American history. It is our most comprehensive path towards a real change for real hardworking people. And it is so close to the finish line. Now we must have the Senate follow suit and bring this win home for the American people. As we make our way to the other side of this pandemic, it is critical that we deliver the support Americans need to rebuild and to prosper. The programs in this bill will help get them there. It would be malpractice if this measure fails to become law. We all know that this is a necessary path to stimulating the economy, reducing inflation, and ensuring the wealthiest among us finally pay their fair share. Make no mistake, our work doesn't stop here, and our work will not stop until the Build Back Better Act passes the Senate without weakening its structure. We call on the Senate to quickly pass this bill and send it to the President's desk as soon as possible. Or as President Obama would say, right away. These are sincere and historic investments in our future, and Americans need relief. It's time for the U.S. Senate to deliver. And I thank you for being here in the cold as we celebrate this monumental accomplishment.
So, as you can see, this is a proud delegation that is proud of the work that we collectively did on behalf of the American people. And now we would like to open the floor for any questions that you may have.
Congresswoman,
Yes.
how confident are you that the bill you get back eventually from the Senate is going to resemble what you already passed?
Well, as you can see, the investments that are made in every program here basically correspond to the needs of the American people. There might be changes, but I don't think that overall it will mean that it will shortchange the programs that we, in listening to the people in this country, understand are important investment. So this is a job-creating bill. This is an anti-inflationary bill, and I think that the Senate, in their wisdom, will try to get this package to the finish line, one that really mirrors what we have here.
Congressman, you talked about the parallels to the Affordable Care Act. One of the issues with the American public was that they didn't perceive the changes as simply lackluster.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
The Affordable Care Act, the changes by the time the program was up and running, there was a lot of time that passed.
Yeah.
Assuming that good chunks of this get through in the Senate version, how long before people actually start to see these programs in place?
So there are investments that will have an immediate impact, like tax credits and child care. We know, for example, that in my district, every month there has been an investment of $38 million for EITC. So those are the type of investment that will have an immediate impact in working families in this country. The thing is that, you know, look, many presidents and presidential candidates, they spoke about a bipartisan infrastructure bill. Many of them, they made pronouncement about bipartisan infrastructure investment. It didn't happen. This president delivered. And now we are making the investment in the care economy. And I believe that with the leadership of President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that we're gonna get it done.
Only thing that I'd add is President Biden came to see the House Democratic Caucus, and he made it clear that everything that has been outlined by the members of the New York delegation, he believes can get 50 votes in the Senate, because Democrats share the priority of building back better, not going back to pre-pandemic normal, because prior to the pandemic, half the American people reported that they couldn't afford a sudden, unexpected $400 expense. That was prior to the pandemic. In the wealthiest country in the history of the world. That's not acceptable in New York City. That's not acceptable anywhere in the nation. That's why we're going to build back better.
That's right.
Any other questions?
This is almost the entire delegation. Was Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez invited today?
Everybody was invited from the New York delegation. Yes, New York City delegation.
Does that include Maliotakis, by the way, or that's just the Democrats?
I don't think she
Did
voted
she
for the
vote?
bill.
Did she vote for this bill? They are already advertising the infrastructure. Well, the infrastructure bill, including those who didn't vote for the bill.
Last question.
Senator Schumer talked to them over the weekend. He specifically singled out Senators Manchin and Sinema as kind of being in the driver's seat moving forward on negotiations. I know Senator Manchin has talked about climate change, talked about paid family leave, having some skepticism on those issues. What's your advice to those senators in the weeks ahead as they try to flesh this out?
Well, our leadership has been in constant conversation, not just with the Senate, but with those two senators in particular. So in many ways, what we spoke about here today has been already vetted and has been discussed by our leadership in the House of Representatives, the Senate, and particularly those two senators. And we know firsthand that they are supportive of many, if not all, of these initiatives.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much.
When we say build back, you say better.